everyone, it's Liz. Today I'm going to answer some of your questions and I'm going to try needle felting a pumpkin garland. Recently I was watching a video by Rachel Maxey, who is one of my favourite YouTubers, and she was putting up a felt pumpkin garland, which was the cutest thing I've ever seen, and I thought, well, what could I do to replicate that? And I didn't want to sew it, and I came across this lovely little felted pumpkin kit from Lincolnshire Fen Crafts, and I thought, why not give it a go? Because, you know, that's the kind of thing that you do on YouTube videos, isn't it? Try things for the first time, obviously. So I bought one of these kits and actually the wrong colour arrived. I got sent a winter pastels kit, which I will show to you now. So when I contacted the lovely lady who runs Lincolnshire Fen Crafts, she told me I could keep the one that she sent out by mistake. I ordered a second kit and she gave me a discount off that, which was very good of her. And I thought that I'd give away the original kit that got sent in error. So the original kit is this kind of pastels colourway, which is very nice, but I did want something a little bit more autumnal. So I'm gonna do a giveaway where I pick a random comment from down below. So if you want to be in with a chance, leave me a comment on the video and I will draw a winner next Friday. So I've never done this before, full disclosure. I'm a big fan of needle felting. I think it looks cool. And I thought it would be really cool to have my own needle felted pumpkin garland to hang on my shelf behind me. So I guess I'd better start reading the instructions. Paused for a minute so that I can look at the instructions, because I'm not very good at doing that and talking at the same time. So it would appear that we take some of this stuff, which is the core wool, and like take a chunk off and then make a ball. So I'm gonna do that and answer a couple of questions. Ooh, I wonder if this is like an ASMR thing. Don't know if you can even hear that. See how that turns out. Right, okay, so concentrate. Right, so what's my favourite thing I've made so far? And that question is from Taylor_0415. I'm going to be one of those irritating people and say it kind of depends, because it depends what you mean by what is my favourite thing. Do you mean like the thing that I enjoyed the process of making the most, or do you mean the thing that I get the most wear out of? I think if you're going for like the thing I get the most wear out of, it would either be the Hudson joggers that I made in kind of star material that's on my Instagram grid, which I will show a photo of up here, somewhere around here. Or like the jeans that I wear all the time. If you're talking about things that I like enjoy the process of making most, then probably enjoy making bras most. Oh man, this is actually super satisfying, just stabbing something over and over again with a big needle. The next question is from Eliza KB1010, who asked which was my favourite week on Sewing Bee. And actually, it was the week that I didn't think would be my favourite week. It was in fact the week that I was quite dreading. It was Reduce, Reuse, Recycle week. And I was actually kind of dreading that week because I wasn't really sure about my made to measure. I wasn't sure I was going to like it. I wasn't actually even sure I was going to be able to pull it off. And also I had a feeling that our pattern challenge was going to be using up old garments, and I didn't feel like I was going to enjoy that either. I didn't feel like I was going to be able to be as creative as I would want to be. And in the end, actually, it was my favourite week. I really enjoyed taking all the garments and trying to make the pattern pieces fit out of them. I enjoyed being able to use several different fabrics, and it just kind of felt like something that I genuinely would never normally do, and I really enjoyed it. I'm just trying to give this a bit more of a circular shape because it's gone kind of flat. I know pumpkins are meant to be a little bit flat, but this is kind of just looks like a dish rather than a pumpkin. Right, so let's move on to another question. I should add that for the people who might be umming and ahhing about whether they really want to enter this giveaway because, you know, they have no needle felting stuff, this kit literally gives you everything that you need to needle felt. I've never needle felted before in my life, and everything comes included, and the instructions are like super comprehensive. So I think you'll be fine. If I can do this, you can do this. Oh look, it's kind of pumpkin-ish shaped. I'm gonna move on now, and I'm gonna wrap it in the orange wool. Let's see. Right, there's this is really bright, this orange, or there's like this kind of rust colour. I think I might use the rusty coloured batting. See how we get on with that. Sit your shape on top of your piece of wool batting and start to wrap the batting sheet around it, pulling towards the centre of what will be the bottom of your pumpkin. Oh, mine's quite flat. Okay, let's not overthink it. Okay. Right, that's wrapped round. Felt the batting into the centre of the wool until it holds. Okay, I guess I just poke it with the needle some more. Until all the core wool is covered, and pull away any excess. Okay. What's the easiest adult item of clothing to make for an absolute beginner? And this is from Alabama Whirly _ I would say that probably for your first item of clothing, you would want to stay away from anything stretchy, just because you probably don't want the added complication of working with jersey or something like that. The tough thing is, I feel like when people are beginners, they often focus on what they can make rather than what they would wear, which for me is like one of the biggest disappointments with sewing, is when you make something and you actually don't even like it or want to wear it in the end. So I would kind of try and think about something that you know you would wear, whether that's a dress or a pair of trousers or a skirt. You can make all of those things relatively simply as long as you find the right pattern. So maybe go for something with an elasticated waist so you don't have to worry about zips and closures. You can make a pair of wide leg palazzo pants if that's your thing, or you could make a kind of circle skirt, which a lot of people like to wear, or you could even make a dress. I'm sure you could find a fairly simple dress pattern. I would definitely say try and make something that you know you'll wear, otherwise you very quickly get disillusioned with sewing. So I have my little pumpkin ball covered with the rust-coloured wool, and it needs to be smooth side up. Using your felting needle, draw a clearly defined line around the entire pumpkin, starting from the middle centre and finishing where your line started. So I think we're gonna like try and make the segments of the pumpkin now. Wish me luck. Cat Mahoney 87 says, I always end up cutting off a lot of the sleeve to get it to fit. What am I doing wrong? Sleeves are deliberately oversized compared to the hole that they need to go into. So the top of the sleeve is called the sleeve head, and the hole it needs to go into is called the arm side. And very basically, you need to do a process called easing in, which is where you have to try and get the excess fabric of the sleeve head to fit into the arm side. And the easiest way to do this is actually to sew a couple of lines of basting stitches all around the top of the sleeve, and usually the pattern will tell you to do this. And then you very gently gather it, and then that will allow you just to fit it into the arm side a lot easier. It's not like my favorite thing to do. I used to find it quite challenging. Thankfully, I didn't have that many problems with it on Sewing Bee, but it's not very easy, I would say. Definitely as a beginner, it can be a bit challenging, but I'd recommend watching some YouTube tutorials and just keep practicing really. And rather than cutting the excess fabric away, which is going to leave you with like this really sort of, if you can imagine, you're going to end up with a really tight shoulder. Rather than cutting the excess fabric away, I would just keep trying and practicing. Otherwise you're going to end up with weird fitting sleeves. Right, so I have my line through the middle of my pumpkin. I mean, it's a bit of a reach to call this a pumpkin yet, to be honest, but we'll see. So I need to repeat this until my pumpkin is divided into 8 segments. So I'm going to do another line across and then like dissect those quarters, and then I'll have 8 segments. Next question is from Lydia Hans, who asks, where do I start with sewing? I think obviously the first thing to do is you need to decide whether you're gonna hand sew stuff or you're gonna get a machine. If you've got a machine, that's great. Obviously you need to learn to use it, but what I would say is probably more importantly than anything, you kind of need to decide what kind of garments you like to wear. Do you mostly live in things like sweatshirts and t-shirts, or do you quite like to wear garments with a bit of structure, or do you like to wear shirts that are made out of woven cotton or like viscose or something? Those things will determine what kind of machines you want to buy. If you're going to work with a lot of stretch fabrics, then you might want to consider buying an overlocker. Really, it all just boils down to what it is that you want to sew. So yeah, that would be my advice, is decide what it is that you think you would like to wear first, and the types of things that you think you would want to sew before you do anything else. And that will inform everything. That will inform what your stash should look like and what kind of fabrics you should buy, and what kind of patterns you should be buying, and even kind of what kind of sewing machine you should be buying, really, because you'll buy a machine that has stretch stitches if you want to sew stretch fabrics, and you'll buy an overlocker if you want to sew stretch fabrics. If you want to sew woven fabrics, then you might decide that all you need is a sewing machine. So yeah, that's my advice. Really decide what it is that you want to sew first. ehaines.art asked, how are you doing? Well, truth be told, a little bit anxious these days. Who isn't, right? Because, you know, I am back on local lockdown in Middlesbrough. We're on local lockdown because cases of COVID-19 have gone up again. So basically, can't mix with other households, and we're only supposed to travel if it's like essential journeys. And also, my youngest daughter is self-isolating because someone in her class has COVID-19. So yeah, it's a little bit of a stressful time, and I'm sure everyone is kind of feeling the same. And that paired with this being the time of year that usually I'm absolutely on my arse with tiredness because the days are getting shorter and my productivity falls. So yeah, we're all just getting on with it and making the best of it, I guess. But I am really thankful to everyone who's kind of following me on Instagram and is watching my YouTube videos. That's keeping me going and kind of keeping my spirits high, which is really cool. I do enjoy interacting with everyone who follows me. So yeah, so I have my little kind of vaguely pumpkin shaped thing going on. I'm quite impressed with this. Hey, I got a little pumpkin. Andy, I got a pumpkin. So right, so next, take a long, thin piece of contrasting wool top and felt securely into the lines you have just created. Again, work from the center and finish where you started, leaving any loose leaving any loose strands. Tip, any loose strands can be trimmed for neatness, but also look good as decoration. Okay, right, so I have a little skinny piece of my wool top, and I'm gonna start felting it into position, I guess. Let's do another question. Should I pre-wash mesh-like underwear fabric? And that's from Kurabi Kuru. Honestly, I always think everyone should pre-wash every fabric, even corsetry fabric. And I know a lot of people are like, no, because you wash the finish out of the coutil. But here's the thing, is that fabrics go through like the manufacturing process and they get made in factories, and those factories are not necessarily all that clean, and the warehouses that they get stuck in are not necessarily all that clean. And I just think it's kind of better to be handling fabric that hasn't got excess dye in it and that hasn't, you know, got loads of dust and, you know, who knows what else on it. And also, some fabrics need to be pre-washed because if you don't, they will stretch when they go through the washer or the dryer. So you should usually wash fabrics in the manner in which you're going to wash the final garment, and that just makes sure that it's not going to shrink on you, which, believe me, is the worst thing. I did make a pair of jeans, and even though I did pre-wash the denim, they shrunk quite drastically and didn't fit me afterwards, and that's a lot of effort to go to for a garment that doesn't fit after the first wash. So yeah, even though I would say that mesh underwear fabric is probably quite unlikely to shrink, you should pre-wash it anyway. This is probably one of the most relaxing things I've done for ages. I'm really enjoying it. I actually didn't expect I was going to enjoy it this much. I thought it might be a bit stressful, but it's quite the opposite. Let's do a different question. Rich_Mayer asks, where did you learn to sew clothes? So I'm self-taught with everything. I briefly learned how to use a sewing machine in textiles class in year 8, which is like second year senior school. And we all learned the very basics of how to use a sewing machine. And then after that, I didn't touch a sewing machine until about 6-7 years ago, when I decided to make a quilt for my eldest daughter, who was then just a baby. I also bought a sewing machine with the intention of making more colourwork cardigans and stuff, and I bought the sewing machine so that I could sew the steeks. And actually, if you have seen my last video, you'll see that that was the very first steek I've ever done. Yeah, it was not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Anyway, so I didn't have anyone to teach me. I think my mum has made a few garments in her life, but I don't, you know, nothing really sort of I would call a hobby. And my best friend Josie sews, but I'm not a very social sewer. I don't tend to I'm not like one of those people who takes their sewing machines to sewing circle type things. I tend to just kind of get my head down and get on with things on my own. So I'm primarily self-taught from YouTube. Basically started off with making kind of jersey garments for my daughters. And then once I had the basics down with that, because obviously making baby clothes and little toddler clothes doesn't take a lot of fabric. So it felt like quite a nice way to start, because I could start with smaller pieces of jersey, and if I messed it up, I didn't feel like I'd invested loads and loads of money in like really extravagant fabrics. I just kind of went from there, really. How I learned was just buying patterns that I liked and then either finding sew-along videos. A lot of companies will do sew-alongs for their patterns, or I would just find like the basic kind of garment that I wanted to sew, whether it was leggings or a hoodie, and I would find like a basic video on YouTube that took you through the steps, and then I'd just apply that to the pattern that I was using. So there's like an absolute wealth of information that you can find out on YouTube, and loads of like good beginner step-by-step videos. I definitely recommend just like find a pattern that you think you will wear, find something that, you know, is touted as easy for beginners, and go from there, really. Oh, Oh, so I guess this is kind of starting to take shape. I don't know if you can see that. There's kind of a lot of raw edges going on, which I'm going to trim off in a bit, but kind of making these little segments. I'm liking it so far. So let's do another question. Chadders1965 asks, what inspires you? I get my inspiration from Instagram accounts, from YouTube channels, from styling of pattern companies, like the way they style their sample patterns, and everyday life as well, I guess. I get inspired by looking at ready-to-wear clothes as well. Like sometimes I'll see something and I'll think, I could make that, but I could make that, you know, it's not quite me, so I'll find a way of making it a bit more me. So yeah, everywhere really, I guess. Oh God, I'm loving this. Art_addict2006 asks, when you were a kid, what did you want to do when you grew up? Probably would have liked to have been a doctor, but didn't work hard enough, didn't get the grades, unfortunately. Far more interested in tattoos, piercings, and boys. Nina.mcc asks, what does it mean to serge the edges? Serge is the American term for overlock. So if you have an overlocker, you will overlock the edges of your fabric to stop it from fraying, or you'll overlock the edges of your seam to stop it from fraying, and that's literally all that means. FaithMonster93 asked, simply, dream fabric. Anything that keeps me warm is my dream fabric. I would really like to find some merino jersey in the UK. It's hard to find, but I would love to find some and make all of the base layers out of it so that I'm just warm all the time. If anyone knows where I can find some nice merino jersey, hit me up. Kind of looks more like an onion than a pumpkin right now, but okay, it's fine. We can fix it. Church Bevan asks, worst sewing mistake? So I think like the worst, most non-fixable thing, and the one thing that always gives me pause for thought now when I do it, is when you're using what they call a directional print. So that's like a print where everything just goes in one direction and there's a right way up and there's a wrong way up. I think the worst thing I ever did was I started cutting out some pattern pieces for some little kimono tops for my nephews when they were babies, and I only had like ½ meter of the fabric, and I needed to use literally every square inch of it, and I cut some of it upside down, and it was so like glaringly obvious that I'd cut one of the front panels upside down. And there was nothing I could do about it, nothing I could do to fix it. Had no spare fabric left. And yeah, that was absolutely devastating because the fabric was absolutely gorgeous and I couldn't fix it. Mimi South asks, what made you try out for sewing bee? Basically, I felt like I was stuck in a bit of a rut, and I realised that there was a lot of things that I was never going to sew because I would never want to sew them for myself. And I'm not big into sewing for other people because generally, like, I'm quite selfish sewer and I don't get a lot of time to sew, so I like to sew for myself or I like to sew for the kids. With that in mind, I thought, well, how am I ever going to get the experience of sewing something like a tailored jacket or something like that? And I thought, well, if I applied for Sewing Bee, that would give me kind of the push that I would need to actually go and sew some really cool garments. And obviously, like, you look at the other Sewing Bees as well from past series, and they just look like they had so much fun, and they look like they have great camaraderie. And I wanted to meet Patrick and Esme because they seem like awesome people, and who doesn't want to meet Joe Lycett because, you know, he's an absolute lovely sweetheart. And I just kind of thought it would be a good experience, and you know what, it was one of the most amazingly fabulous and tiring experiences of my entire life. I do apologise because I know and realise that I'm not actually looking up all that much. I'm not looking at the camera very much at all. But I'm just kind of focusing on not stabbing my own hand with pins. But I do have kind of a finished pumpkin. I'm just going to snip like some of this stuff off the ends And then I think it's time to move on to the stalk and the leaf. Right, so pumpkin leaf. Place a thin layer of wool top approximately 4 inches by 2 inches on your felting mat. With your needle, draw a very rough teardrop shape, ensuring the line is clearly defined. Okay, so I guess I just stabbed this repeatedly, so I'll do another question. How long have you been sewing? And that's also from Mimi.South. I have been sewing about 6 years, I think now, so it's hard to keep track. I started when my eldest daughter was a baby, and she's nearly 9 now actually, so maybe it's been longer than that. And the first thing that I sewed, which actually ironically is the next question by Jules Britannia, the first thing that I ever sewed was a quilt. And I figured that that would be just easy because it felt like a lot of squares and a lot of straight lines. And then quickly realised that for quilting you need quite a lot of good technique and a lot of precision, which frankly was not very me when I first started sewing. Right, carefully use your felting needle to create a more defined leafy shape. I'm not doing very well with this, it has to be said. It kind of also looks like an onion, weirdly, maybe more like a shallot. Let me look at the reference pictures and see what that one looks like. Actually, maybe it's not too bad. Maybe I can just pull a little bit out and just make it a little bit more pointy at the end. And now, what do we think? Does it look leafish? I think it'll be okay. Yeah, maybe. I think it's a bit big. Yeah, we'll see. I'll attach it and see how I feel. Maybe it needs to be a bit more matted. Yeah, I think that'll do. I think we can make something of that. You just trim this beard off. Right, what's next? Pumpkin stalk. Ooh, what shall we make that out of? Let's do one of these jobbies, a little orange one. Right, pumpkin stalk. Lay a thin piece of wool top on your felting mat. Fold it in half and felt all over, creating a rough square or rectangle. Okay. I'm on to the second page of questions. What comes first, fabric or pattern? And that's from Durate845. Just try not to fall over, casual. Yes. Right, so I've actually given quite a lot of thought to this and to my process because someone asked me this not long after sewing Be Finished, and I kind of realised that neither come first for me. It's always more like the concept of the thing that I want to sew, or rather the concept of the thing that I want to wear, more often than I'll see a pattern and be like, I must have that pattern. I mean, that does happen, don't get me wrong, but not like as often as I get an idea in my head and think, I really want to sew a whatever. So like at the minute, I'm fairly obsessed with the idea of making a coat. I do sometimes see fabrics and think I could make something cool with that. If I see a cool jersey, I'll happily stash that because I know that I've got loads of patterns of things that I've made previously that'll use jersey fabric, but I won't like often just stash stuff for a rainy day. I usually have an idea what I want to sew and then I will find a pattern and fabric to suit. Okay, I think I'm supposed to fold the bottom up so that it's kind of thicker at the bottom. So it kind of looks more like a, I don't know, like a thick bottomed stalk. Oh God, I'm rolling my stalk. I'm not convinced. Kind of looks like a cone rather than a stalk. Have to see if we can do something about the shape. I'm not sure. I don't know, does that look like a stalk? A little bit misshapen. Yeah, we'll go for it anyway. Right, so, oh right, I suppose I should actually look at the next. Felt the leaf, folded end and stalk, thin end firmly to the center of the pumpkin. I'm not doing as I'm told there. So, felt the leaf, folded end and stalk, thin end, firmly to the center of the pumpkin. Do you have hesitation when cutting into limited project fabric? If so, how do you get over it? And that is from v.a.kelly. And I guess the short answer is yes, I do have a hesitation. I have massive hesitation. I procrastinate all the time because I worry about whether it was all just a lie and a hallucination that I was ever on sewing bee. Am I actually even really any good at sewing? And then I just try and crack on with stuff. What I do to get over it is if I'm trying a pattern that I've never tried before, or I'm really, really worried about using this fabric that I know I can't get any more of, I will try and make a mock-up in a less expensive, not so limited fabric that has similar characteristics. I'll try and make a mock-up version that I know I'll wear so the fabric won't just be wasted. I'll use that as kind of like a baseline and make all my mistakes on that version, and then I'll feel more confident and more secure in cutting into the limited edition fabric. Hope that helps. Favorite ice cream flavor, and that's from Seems Wonky. If I'm like out anywhere like Whitby and I get an ice cream cone, I'll always go for like a salted caramel or a honeycomb caramel type flavor. They are my absolute favourites. Blueberry Buttons asked, how in God's name do I sew straight? I believe actually that Matt, who was in the final of the Sewing Bee, has set up a new website called Keep Britain Sewing, and I think I remember seeing on there that there is actually a little tutorial on sewing straight lines, so you should head over there. But basically the best tip that I can give you is don't look at the needle. If you look on your needle plate, there are straight lines, so line the edge of your fabric up with one of those straight lines and just keep your eye focused on that going through the machine. You can also line the edge of the fabric up with the edge of your presser foot, which will help you sew in a straight line. If worst comes to the worst, use something like a heat removable Frixion pen or a pencil or a Crayola marker, which will wash out in the wash. Just draw a straight line and sew along it. And then this was my favorite question and final for today is, on the Sewing Bee, did you have to buy your own drinks at the cafe? No, we didn't. And fun fact, in every scene where you saw me drinking, they tried to make it look like coffee, but it wasn't coffee because I'm a massive child and only drink fizzy drinks. So I was drinking cola in all of those scenes, and everyone else was drinking tea and coffee. So there you go, fun fact of the day. And I think I am just about done with this pumpkin. And actually, pretty impressed with my little self. Oh, look at that. That, it's a little pumpkin. I mean, that looks a little bit erect. That's just, now it looks like a nose. Oh my God. Right, okay, let's try and not focus on the stalk too much. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm gonna make about 8 more, I think, and try and relax with a gin and tonic while I do that. And then I think I'm gonna get some jute or hessian and kind of string them up maybe, and then they can go on my shelf. So thanks for watching, and if you want to be in with a chance of winning the Winter Pastels version of this kit, which I have to say I've super enjoyed this. It's been so relaxing. I'm sure it's been annoying for you all hearing that in the background while I'm talking, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, if you'd like to be in with a chance of winning the Winter Pastels version of this kit, where you get all of the wool that you need, really comprehensive instructions, you get the felting needles and the little foam pad that you need to use to felt on, drop me a comment below in the comments section and I'll pick a random winner next week and I'll announce it on Instagram. So yeah, thanks for joining me. It's been Wonderful. And I'll see you next time. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Means the world. Thank you very much. Goodbye.